What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports Podcast, where we pay the bills. It is Jake Micah, as always, joined by my co-host, Michael Partham, and joined tonight by the one, the only Maniac, as we are here to break down the Bills season. It's Bills season wrapped. Unfortunately, it's 3 weeks earlier than we all would have hoped that we'd be doing this, but we're here. We're here for the people tonight to talk through one last Bills game this year, and look where we're going for. We're gonna come out of this positive. We're gonna have a plan in place for the Buffalo Bills Super Bowl run in 2024 and 2025. That's my goal. Mikey, how you doing?
Well, same old, same old. Another January, another crushing, soul hurting loss that we have a bunch of excuses for and very little answers going forward.
Well said, Mike. How about you, Maniac?
Like an immune system that has just been, warding off disease, I am absolutely used to this feeling of just heartbreak, confusion, anger. I mean, I think I feel pretty good 100 hours later compared to a lot of people. But obviously, Bills season ends. It's the saddest day of the year, plain and simple.
That's facts. I was pretty much in line with you, Maniac. I was memeing right away. Like I was sitting there, like I sat back, head up for about, I don't know, a couple minutes after the game. And then I was like, this is just what it is. Like, we've been in this spot before. It doesn't make it easier, but yeah, we're all going through the stages at a different pace right now. And we're going to get down to the bottom of it and figure out what did happen, Mike, because as you said, there's a lot of different ways. I've seen every single explanation on social media, everywhere else, of what happened in that game, whether it was whatever you want to blame. And I want to hear what you guys go into before we go into. But Mike, what do you think went wrong against KC? Was it a massive failure of a totality of a year and a totality of a team build that ended up coming short in the moments? Or was it a game that was really damn close, came down to the last final minutes, decided by a couple big plays here or there? And that's all it comes down to. Two great teams that were throwing haymakers, and we just came up on the short end again.
There's at least 2 or 3 plays that in the Marvel multiverse, we'd be in an alternate reality where the Bills are going to the AFC Championship game and possibly the Super Bowl. But then there's just things that AJ Klein being completely outclassed and outplayed, and maybe if Dorian Williams had gotten that start earlier on, maybe it would be slightly different results. But of course, missing not just one linebacker who we've missed all year, but 2 of our best middle linebackers really contributed to KC basically dissecting us in ways that they hadn't really shown in all the year or even in recent weeks. And apparently Travis Kelce is not presumed dead. The reports of his retirement have been greatly exaggerated. Apparently, if we can leave him that wide open for an end zone touchdown, then maybe he's still got some gas left. I don't know, but Diggs almost catching that deep ball. Josh almost connecting with Shakir and getting bumped into with Deion Dawkins by Chris Jones.
Yeah,
so many things that could have gone, with. Just like, Al Pacino said, it's a game in inches. The inches are everywhere. Well, the inches everywhere pretty much hurt the Bills in this particular game. Whether it's Bass missing by inches or Allen missing throws by inches or guys dropping passes by inches. The defensive line did not show up at all for this game. But what was supposed to be one of the Bills' strengths and what was supposed to be one of the emphasis of Sean McDermott for this entire team and his team build, not just a good defensive line, but a good rotation of a defensive line. And where were they in this particular game? And they haven't been able to get to Mahomes in any of these playoff games that they had against him. So and we'll talk about, what they should do moving forward, but I think it's a indictment of how they've built this team and the areas that they've neglected to this point. And we're going to go into what they should do going forward.
Yeah, Maniac. That was great. Well said, Mike. And I think you touched on a lot of the things that went you can just, if you want to just chalk it up to, hey, like a couple plays here and there, that's fine. But it was those couple plays were could be pointed back to issues within the build, not just this year, but the last couple of years coming to this moment. Maniac, how are you feeling? You were in the building. How are you broke it down. You did some blame pie on Monday night and talked through it. But how are you feeling now? Like you said, 100 hours later, you're feeling better. But about this game in particular, how did you feeling still?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm still in a little bit of like shock about how it all went down. Obviously, I mean, Partham, thanks for rubbing the salt in the wound. Like, I wasn't the one responsible for Travis Kelce after what I did last weekend. But with that said, it's like so
I forgot
crazy
about
that. You go to the game, right? Like, we dropped easily and again, you could call the Sherfield one where he's getting PI'd a drop or not, but dropped probably about 150 yards in passes in that game. The defense could not get a stop for the first 3 quarters. I think you alluded to, we definitely would have benefited. Listen, you can call me a McDermott simp all you want. AJ Klein was coming off an amazing game against the Steelers. He knows exactly where he's supposed to be in the system. And I know people are like, oh, well, Dorian should know that. He's been coached up all year. Klein has been coached up a lot more by McDermott than Dorian Williams has. So I think he was going with the guy who he knew would be in the right spot. Again, did it help that AJ Klein knew where he was supposed to be? No, because he was just getting fucking PWN3D pwned all friggin' day for the first 3 quarters. Now, let me digress a second, though. The defense couldn't get a stop for the first 3 quarters. But like I've said to any Bills fan going in, look at some of these numbers. The Bills ran 78 plays. The Chiefs ran 47.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, the Bills had 7 more first downs than the Chiefs. And the most of all, and this is typically where these games are won, is 3rd and 4th down. The Chiefs were 1 for 5 on 3rd down. That just speaks to how little you were getting them there ultimately. So you hear those numbers, you're like, oh, they should won. And again, I said this day after, I've been saying it since. You tell any Bills fan, it doesn't matter what team they have, any team for the last 4 years, if you could go into the 4th quarter needing 3 points to tie, 4 points to win, and you have 3 possessions, any Bills fan would take that. They would take that tomorrow. They would take that in a minute if they could. But the Bills couldn't get it done. That's just how it happened on that Sunday night.
One thing I want to point out about the first down discrepancy, 27 for the Bills to 21 for the Chiefs. They didn't need that many first downs because they got at least 8 20-plus yard offensive plays, and the Bills got exactly 0. So they were skipping first downs left and right, while the Bills were just methodically going down the field. And when you do that, when you have those 10-plus play drives, it invites a lot of variance. It invites a lot of probability of things going wrong and passes being dropped, of course, and coming up short of the first down. If you can't get that toxic differential of 20-plus yard plays along with turnovers on your side, then you're not going to win very many games.
It's crazy how many 20 to 40 yard plays they had because they didn't really have like a 50-plus yard play. Yeah. They just had a lot of 20 to 40s along the way. And yeah, like you said, Parthy, that got them an average of 3 yards more per play. And ultimately that made things easier on them for most of the game.
Yeah, Mike, you read my mind. I was going right to the toxic plays because and Maniac, we talked about it before the game Sunday. I think we were both in alignment. Like if the Bills, again, control the pace of play, control time of possession in this game, they keep Mahomes in the pocket, keep him off the field, that we thought there would be success and they thought it would be an equal a Bills win. And the Bills did that. They executed that game plan, but you got to mix in some explosives there. Having the explosives from the Kansas City side is one thing. Letting up the 8 explosives, and this is obviously it was an offense this year that struggled, but it's Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Like I think we have to go to the point where no matter what their offensive stats look like throughout the year, you can't just expect Patrick Mahomes to not come through in a playoff game. He's gonna He's going to put up his numbers. He's going to play at an elite level because that's what he's done and pretty much every single time he's been in this situation. But the Bills' lack of explosiveness is where the team failed in my eyes. Like, you talk about the D-line and the investment and how they no-showed. And they did it. They did no-show. I mean, Ed Oliver, 1 assisted tackle in this game. Von Miller, who's been basically disappeared for this entire season, was their best defensive lineman in this game. And after, there was not the contributions from Epineza like there was the first time against Kansas City. We didn't get Leonard. Where was Leonard Floyd? Like, Leonard Floyd all year, awesome, just disappearing in this game. But the lack of pass catchers, the lack of support around Stephon Diggs, and I do not want to hear about, if Gabe Davis was there, chief killer, it would have been different, because putting the eggs into the Gabe Davis basket is the issue that started this season in the first place, because Gabe was inconsistent all year long. And I was screaming from the top of the heavens last year that they needed to get more wide receivers in this room. I was screaming at the top of the heavens a couple years ago. Jeremy White's been screaming it for years. Like, there's been so many different people in this, watching this team for years, that are like, we need more dynamic pass catchers. We need to add to Josh's fastball. And I'll give them credit for adding James Cook on the third try of adding a running back. I'll give them credit for adding Dalton Kincaid, who, I mean, could be one of the top 5 tight ends in the league for the next couple of years, and will obviously keep building rapport and have great seasons with Allen. But I want to come back to the Stephon Diggs. My first reaction was coming after Stephon Diggs. And I still think I'm still not very happy with Stephon Diggs, because the second half of the season, it was right after the tweet. It was right after. The timing is not – it's right after the Trayvon Diggs tweets and everything else. He fell off a cliff this year. And if you want to say he was injured, if you want to say there weren't pass catchers around him that could help support him, if you want to say that the scheme changed, that they were not forcing.
I want to jump in real quick.
Go ahead.
A big point of this is, was he injured? People think he was nursing injury, low point. My only thought process is, if he was nursing an injury, why are you running a jet sweep with the guy on the very first play of the game? So to be honest, when I saw the jet sweep on the first play of the game, I go, holy shit, Stephon Diggs is fully healthy if they're doing that. That was just my thought, but keep going.
And he burned L'Jarius Sneed, who's one of the best corners in the game, on a deep ball, and just doesn't come down with it. Like, that doesn't look like a guy who's injured there. And if he is injured, sit him out for 3 weeks and get him healthy, because there's all this talk from McDermott this week and Bean this week about how going into the playoffs, need to be at our healthiest and playing our best in December and January. Well, they needed that guy at the top of his game. So my biggest thing is that they have not done enough in these years past to add to that pass catching room. And it came and you talk about the D line that you brought up, Mike. This is an indictment on Bean as much as it is McDermott, because it's either A, addressing the wrong needs, or B, making picks that didn't end up working out, and that has hurt them. Because you know what the Chiefs had is guys who could come in and impact the games right away. The same thing with the Ravens, and that's why they're in this position. I think that's why we're talking about the Bills as we get into their cap situation and everything later, and everybody's like, oh man, this is going to look tough, because they have guys in positions that just haven't turned out the way they wanted to.
And by real quick, because we're looking for, what went wrong, et cetera. Yeah. If I told you that one of these teams had 4 crucial drops on Sunday, we watch a lot of the Chiefs, being Bills fans. They've had a lot of drops this year. They've been plagued by them almost.
Where did MVS come from in this game?
Your money that it would have been the Chiefs with those drops.
Did he find that elephant glue that the one guy on the replacements had?
Had to be something, man.
When you watch it, I mean, again, Bills fans overanalyze everything. It's almost like he just turns a little bit too much back towards the ball when he's relocating it. Yeah. He sprints and he takes it and he gets the space. He turns just a little bit too much. And then he has to hop himself back to jump, and he doesn't line up with the ball, obviously. But, yeah, brutal.
Yeah. Have you seen this stat about 100-yard receiving games over the final 13 games for the Bills? Gabe Davis actually had 3. Khalil Shakir had 2, and nobody else had any, including Stephon Diggs.
I also saw something where second half of the season, Shakir was doing more on basically the same number of targets, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I saw that too. Last 10 Bills games. Receiving yards, Khalil Shakir, 462, Stephon Diggs, 422 on a number of targets. Shakir on 37 targets and Diggs on 80 targets for those yards.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Shakir led the league in catch rate for the season too. It's the Diggs question is not the Diggs question no longer is going to be, you know, does he want to be here? Does he, whatever. It's like, when is he going to show up in these big playoff games? Because I think the playoff stats are pretty damning too. And yes, there is a thing where you take away the number one receiver. So A, that he needs more help because he needs attention away from him. But B, one of these games, you gotta give your quarterback something and make the play where he, you know, when he needs it the most. So the last thing I want to bring up here is the Allen throw at the end, because Allen, I'm perfectly okay with the throw to Shakir. It's a touchdown if Chris Jones doesn't make an all-world. Chris Jones is one of the best defensive linemen in football and has been for years. And what Chris Jones did what we paid Von Miller to do. He closed that game out on the one rep that he needed to do it. He made it happen. Do you put any more blame on Allen, or do you think that he played as well as he could have in this game and that the defense failed him again?
Looking at that play again with Diggs underneath, and I was seeing Diggs underneath live as it was happening and screaming, you know, Diggs is open, throw it to him. But I think there was at least two defenders up ahead were at the first down marker that would have stopped him before he would have been able to get there. So it would have been at least a 3rd and short, but then that keeps the drive going. And some people are saying on 3rd and 9, Kincaid was open to make it a 4th and short situation, which they might have been able to go for if McDermott was willing to take that chance rather than try for the field goal for the tie. So I don't blame Allen for trying to find Shakir in the end zone. I mean, it was like those plays that he miscommunicated with Gabe Davis on at least once or twice. But Shakir was there. He made the right break, and Allen made the right throw to the right area. He just couldn't put his follow through into it.
Yep. What about you, Maniac?
It's tough because it's like the Bills multiverse where there's like 38 different ways you can go. I'll start with the throw to like the idea that he should have thrown to Diggs. The only pro to that, I think, was because it was short of the 6th. The only pro to that, in my opinion, was that it would have kept the clock running, because I've seen a lot of discourse. Well, the Bills would have been tied with a minute 40. You're kidding yourself if you don't think Mahomes would have driven. That would obviously be from that sense of, you know, that perspective. But no, of course, I live and die with that Josh Allen throw. I live and die with Josh Allen interceptions. I live and die with Josh Allen fumbles. Josh Allen is my guy. I'm gonna live and I'm gonna die. But there's so many people who hate on McDermott for not letting Allen be aggressive enough, and then they get pissed that Allen didn't check this down. Like, do you not see how convoluted that is in your brain? I mean, seriously. So I'm gonna live and die with it. I thought it was a great, like, anticipatory idea. Obviously, it was off by a couple feet due to the contact, but I'd go down with shooting again.
I'm completely with you on it. I like you just said, that was the point I was going to make. That if I sit all here on this podcast and said, let Josh be Josh, and that you have to take the good with the bad and everything else, I cannot then in the biggest moment of the season be upset that he's going for the kill shot when it was there. It was open. The play was there. Shakir was open in the end zone, and Chris Jones just made a better play. Like, Chris Jones, an all-pro, made a play against a Pro Bowl left tackle, and whatever, Deion played great all season, obviously deserves the Pro Bowl, got destroyed on that rep. But that's what happens again. Great players make great plays at times like that. And Chris Jones did that. And that's what you got to chalk it up to. I think there's a lot of people that just want to put, and obviously we're looking at everything through a Bills-centric lens. We're Bills fans, everything else. Man, the Chiefs are just a heavyweight team. They're a champion, and they came out and made the plays when they needed to too. Like, they matched everything in this game. Like, the Bills were right there with them. Throw it, like, it was 10-9 rounds the whole way through, and then it was a late knockout. Like, that's all it was. And sometimes that happens in these games, and I don't think there's any correlation with, you know, the last couple years or anything else. This felt just like a game that could come down to any type of play, and the Chiefs made that play, the Bills didn't. That's where you got to go to. That's where I ended up with on it.
One last note on that Shakir throw, by the way. I feel like Allen didn't float it almost, because I think Allen realizes in the last millisecond that he's got someone in his face. He's got someone on his shoulder. And so I think with that, he keeps the throw just a little bit low. Yeah. You know, let's not leave it hanging and get picked. The irony being, I think, you guys haven't seen the play as well. I think if that ball's floated another third of a second, another half second, Shakir could get in there and maybe dive for it.
Yep. Any last thoughts, Mike, before we go on?
The Bills have been getting defensive stops in the last third of the season that they hadn't been getting at the middle of the season. But against this Chiefs team on this particular day, I don't think they would have trusted their defense to make a stop in those last less than 2 minutes, 1:45, whatever it was. So I guess you could make an argument that, checking it down to make it 3rd and short, 4th and short would have actually been better to bleed the clock a little bit. Not unlike the old days where we didn't let Brady have one more possession if we could help it, like Fred Jackson going down at the 1 and kneeling out the clock as best we could. Yeah, it's tough because my opinion is, and as far as team building goes, forget the defensive line. You're not going to get pressure on Mahomes, especially in the postseason. You got to build it through the secondary. You got to make him hang in that pocket just a little bit more, not unlike Allen was having to hang in the pocket and have the option to take off running, because we don't have that many receivers, if any at all, that can, get separation these days.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. So that's our KC debrief. We got through it. It is what it is, man, at this point, but let's get into the whole year, because this year was a wild ride for us in a lot of different ways. Obviously the 6-6 start, the run to the division. We had a lot of fun along the way, beat down of the Cowboys, beating the Chiefs in Arrowhead, beating the Dolphins on the road. So I'll start with you, Maniac, and then you, Mike. Was the year a failure or was it a success in your eyes? Would you be happy if you would have hit the button before this year started? Would you have taken this?
I mean, I would have definitely taken hosting 2 home playoff games for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I think that's a success. I think where they ended up based on where their trajectory was a failure ultimately. So I think the answer is a little bit in the middle. I think fans will want, fans who love coping will want to say it was a success. They overcame it. You can really frame it any which way. Bottom line, you had Josh Allen, and this is another year where you did not win the Super Bowl. That in itself is a failure. You also had a season where I think halfway through the year, they had lost basically 25% of the salary cap to injury and IR. You had Trey White out. You had Daquan Jones out. You had Matt Milano out. I think those injuries really hit in the middle of the year when they were stutter stepping and kind of going to that 6-6. So from that perspective, you could say, well, what they did with that was a success. You could look at the emergence of the young weapons. I mean, I think for the first 4 to 6 weeks, people were kind of pissed about Kincaid. They're like, this Laporta guy's doing everything. Now I think everyone's happy with Kincaid. I think everyone's happy with Cook in his year 2. I think everyone's happy with Shakir and what we saw in that development. And those are your weapons going forward. In that sense, it's a success. But again, bottom line, this is another year where Josh Allen's getting closer to 40 than he is to 18. And, he didn't win the Super Bowl. Bottom line. So through that, it's a failure. But the answer's in the middle.
What about you, Mike?
As Maniac said, given what they had to work with on defense at times, you could say that they overachieved a little bit, but at the end of the day, this is a results-oriented business. And if you can't get past where you've been in the recent years, then if you're a true competitor, if you're gonna get pissed off for greatness out here, like so many of the greats have, like your Jordans and your Kobes and let's say your Bradys as well, then you can't be anything but unhappy about this. We as fans could, take comfort in certain details about the emergence of certain players and how others played in emergency situations. But at the end of the day, what really matters is what the GM, the coach, and the quarterback thinks. And if they don't think this is a failure, then they're not going to really be able to do much going forward, because they're the ones that have to look at this as a failure and be that much more motivated to come back next year, pissed off and trying to do that much more to, do whatever they can to get past at least the divisional round, for crying out loud.
Yeah. You made the basketball reference. I'll make it to the current NBA status right now. The Bills are like the Philadelphia 76ers. They got Joel Embiid, MVP caliber player. Go out there, you think they should be a title contender every year, and they max out in the second round. Maybe they'll get to that championship series, but they're gonna end up losing it to their rivals in that team too. And that's where we're at. We're at this team that is we know that they have the talent level across the board. We know that the players are in place. We know that Josh Allen, everybody looks at, regardless of what ridiculous sentiments you hear on ESPN or other television programs during the week, we know it's a guy that you can go into every season and be a Super Bowl favorite when he's on your team. He's an MVP finalist, for Christ's sake. He's one of the best 5 players in the league this year, according to everybody who's voting on that. And that's a failure when you don't get to the Super Bowl or get to and that's the thing too, is like, if this team had a Super Bowl appearance, even maybe you could have a different thought on how this regime has been the last couple years and everything, but they haven't even broken through to that. And I think the biggest failure is that Beane, said it a couple years ago after the loss to KC, like, we're building to beat KC. Okay, you got them at home. You built this team to beat KC. You have all this investment in this D line. They're all healthy, and there were injuries on the defense. That's tough. I mean, the injuries on the defense should not be something that is just overlooked, because it was a big, even just in this game with having Christian Benford, who could have made a difference in this game. Terrell Bernard, like we were talking about AJ Klein earlier, like Terrell Bernard makes a huge difference in this game. And the responsibility of that D line, maybe there's more, maybe there's more diverse pressures sent from the secondary or something. Maybe there's a different game plan to attack Mahomes if they have more guys in the secondary or have a better linebacking core going into this game, and there's not so much reliance on the front four. But this defense was built to get pressure with the front four and everything else. So all that being said, yeah, I think it's a failure. I think to get the 6-6 start, like, this is a team that should be 13-4, 14-3 when you look at the season on paper. So to be 11-6 is a failure, I think, to begin with. It's also just a shame that the Bills have been the 2 seed 3 of the last 4 years, and it's when the NFL switched to having 7 teams and they don't get that bye, because damn, that bye week would have helped out this year with all the injuries that happened in that wild card game. So that's the Billsy luck, I think, that sneaks into it more than anything. But let's get bright. Let's look forward here. Mike, I'm sure you've been digging in. I'm sure you've been looking up what free agents, what draft prospects, whatever else can get to be done to improve this team. But just from a higher level, what would be the ways you would attack this offseason to keep this team a Super Bowl contender? As of right now, $43 million over the cap. But our friend Greg Thompson at Cover One had a pod yesterday, and they can get to realistically about 25 to 30 million under the cap with a bunch of restructures and letting go of some of older players and everything else. But so I'm assuming they'll be somewhere above the cap by the time free agency hits around. They obviously have a plethora I think they have 11 draft picks in this draft. So they have a plethora of picks to work with. What moves would you make this offseason? What would be your top priorities for this team going forward?
Well, I believe Brandon Beane alluded to once again having to shop in the discount section and not, having a lot of resources to work with. So not to expect any big moves to be made. So I want my wide receiver train. I'm all aboard with Jeremy White from GR about getting some receivers plural. I don't want to just draft one in the first round. I want like a second and third one. And it's probably going to have to come from the draft unless someone's willing to take less money to play with Josh Allen over here. I'm letting Gabe walk no matter what. Even if he wants to come back for less money, his limited route tree, opposing defensive backs saying how easy it is to game plan for him. I think he's been figured out. I think he has his games here and there, but not free. He's very hot and cold player. He's probably frustrated a bunch of fantasy owners in the process. We got to move on from him. We got to find our next wide receiver 1A. If not, find a replacement for Stephon Diggs if he's lost a step or if he's been figured out. We're not sure what it is. Is it scheming? Is it double teaming? Is it lack of communication? Is he injured? We have more questions than answers at this point. So we got to get our receiver core replenished back to 2020 levels as it was.
Yeah.
When we had John Brown, and Cole Beasley was actually a contributor at that point. I don't know that they're going to move on from Matthew Smiley as special teams coordinator, but I think at this point, with all the different ways that special teams has let us down this year, whether it was kick coverage or field goal coverage or kicking or punting, I think we need somebody else to oversee all that. And just go and get wide receivers. We're going to have to replenish the defensive line, unfortunately, in some regard because of all the guys that we either can't re-sign or don't want to bother re-signing. We still got Von Miller as an albatross around our necks, whether it's because of money or because of off-the-field issues.
Yep.
And I want to go get safeties because we're going to have to replace Hyde and Poyer at some point. If not this coming season, then at least 2 seasons from now. But wide receiver is going to be the top of my list as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well said. What about you, Maniac?
Yeah, we're barking up the same tree. I'm all in on wide receivers and safeties in the draft for sure. I think Poyer has another year still left. Hyatt is going to be up in the air, but if you can get those young safeties in under Jordan Poyer, I've seen some like fantasy talk about like Trey White going to safety. I mean, is that even like you've all lost your brain. I really think all of you just played Madden and like the ability to move a CB to safety like didn't really ever downgrade them. Like I'm pretty sure at the NFL, those are completely different positions as far as scheme, responsibility, what you're supposed to do. So I don't know. I won't talk too much further on my ass, but that just seems very like fantasy like. And I will say this right now. If the Bills take a receiver in the first round and then like the third or fourth round, guarantee there will be some point where there's a controversy where our third or fourth round wide receiver is performing better. And I just want to say I'm all in on it. I want to maximize those skill guys.
Yeah.
And the other thing is you need those skill guys under cost control for the next 3 to 4 years now that Allen's number is going up in a big way, basically doubling. So I'm all in on that. I'm all in on the skill guys. I think you got all your grunt guys. We are going to get – now this is the sleeper thing about this. I agree with Con Miller being a big-time weight on our shoulders this season. I think maybe you give him another full offseason. He might have, a little bit of, to quote Mark Henry, he might have a little bit left in the tank as far as what he can provide. We were seeing some nice flashes at the end of the year. The off the field stuff, like just to be clear, if anybody asked me, put my feet to the fire, I think that he's going to be in trouble based on what happened on the off the field stuff. So we'll see, but. I did like what he was doing on the field. Again, I'm going by the NFL's rules. If they're going to let him play, I'm going to assess his play. Yeah. The last thing I just want to say, in addition to Miller potentially coming back next year, we only got 4 games of Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano this year.
Yes.
So that should be an absolute weapon for McDermott. And again, people can hate on McDermott all they want. I thought when he had a healthy defense, that defense was looking world class, top 5, top 3 easily. I think it started to slip by the end with the injuries. But I think you give them a healthy defense. And again, you always say you can't guarantee injuries or anything in the NFL. Well, for the first couple of years of the Bills, they did pretty good with injuries. The last couple of years, they haven't. So let's hope we can get a reversion to that mean next year and maybe get a healthy season.
And we talked about it earlier. Like it was game in the like it was a failure against KC, but it was a game in the margins. Like this roster with the injuries, a couple plays go different. We're previewing an AFC championship here and a potential chance to go to the Super Bowl, even with the injury. So like everybody's worried about the roster being similar to this year. It's like, okay, like they can get healthier. And like you said, Von, ACLs really are 2 year, like your second year and the recovery from it is when you get back to full 100% strength and speed and everything else for the season. He had flashes this year more towards the end of the year, which you would think would be encouraging towards the start of next year, but they're going to lose Floyd. We don't know what the interior of that line is going to be. That's what scares me in the draft of them not picking wide receiver round 1 is that they're like, well, we need to pick some big Tavondre Sweat from Texas type D tackle to sit next to Ed Oliver, and they're not going to learn from their mistakes. That's really this offseason is really going to test what Bean, like if Bean can learn from his mistakes, and McDermott too. Like where like McDermott's in the presser talking about they want to be pass first, and Bean's talking about how they need to be more explosive and everything else. And they have been a pass first team. Don't get me wrong. They have first down a lot.
That was a little sketchy. I'll say that was.
It was
probably the sketchiest part of McDermott. Like he really tried to slip it because they were aggressive. I think he has learned a little bit from some of the mistakes. He should absolutely not be reeling in Josh Allen some of the ways he was in past years. But the fact that he slipped in, like, I've always been a pass. Like, what?
And yeah, because it's not like we've listened to you say, like, we need to establish the run. We need to get it in there. Like, yeah, it is a little ridiculous. But maybe he's sick and tired of seeing, like, Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Valdes-Scantling, like, yes, he was bad all year long. I think we roasted him plenty of times. But having that tertiary guy who can make plays in a moment like that, that's made the difference then. So I'm with you about adding guys in the draft. I also think they should take a flyer if they can get a low-cost guy. If there's anybody that they can get, like, add 3 receivers to the room needs an overhaul. Like Shakir and Diggs, and then you don't need anybody else left in that room. Like, give it a new option, give it a new look. We know Kincaid's going to be better next year than he was this year, and I'm really excited to see what he looks like. But imagine how dynamic Dalton Kincaid will be if there are actually weapons on the outside opening up the middle of the field for him too. Like it all kind of relates together, and yeah. This team needs to add to Josh Allen. Like we've seen, that's the biggest thing is you've built through defense and hope that Josh and Diggs and whoever else can get you. And they've gotten to you to great lengths, but they've maxed out clearly maxed out at the division round. It's 3 years in a row. Something has to change. And maybe if you take a couple swings and it doesn't work out, whatever, but you can't just be insane and keep doing the same things over and over again, adding to the D line, adding to the defense, and hoping that Allen's going to pull you out of it again. It's just not going to happen.
We've seen bar charts on social media every once in a while that shows that the Bills have been mostly pass heavy, but
recently,
I don't think they have been as much in the last few weeks. Ironically, since Joe Brady took over, and we've thought that the passing game has had a marked improvement, at least using motion and all these other things. Where Dan Orlovsky was saying, Ken Dorsey was like one of the more predictable offenses in the NFL. But just this past game, you looked at the breaks and the splits in passing and running, 39 pass attempts and 39 rushing attempts. So there's your complementary balanced football, which I hope wasn't by design. Some of those had to be, Josh Allen scrambles when he couldn't find anybody downfield. But I hope we're going to stop, the drafting of running backs in days 1 and 2 and try to find something else to draft on offense that could provide us with a few more yards than a rushing attempt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you take away Josh Allen's runs and the Damar Hamlin catastrophe, that was a third of the running attempts on Sunday. So, and that's why they love the passing game so much, because sometimes if the pass isn't there, what happens? The big golden retriever takes off. You gotta love it. So yeah, it's a weapon every single time.
I can't remember. I was talking about it, I think, with my brother the other day, and he said Sean McDermott thought it was about to be a Disney movie when Damar Hamlin got that snap.
Oh yeah, that was flying around everywhere.
That's a good one.
Against 10 guys too. If you watch the replay, and again, because we are basking in the end, it's the year-end wrap. This is another crazy point. I think I said something crazy earlier, but if Damar Hamlin actually takes that snap and doesn't move for like the first 2 seconds, I think he actually picks it up. Because if you look at it, he kind of tried to go through the 2 or 3 guys that were there and didn't make it. But if you give the play like another half second, everyone gets mowed down because they only have 9 guys up on that part of the field.
Yep. I think so. I think he was excited, and I think he's not a runner. He ran passes a little bit ahead of his blocks a little bit. Just the fact that once Reed Ferguson, though, shout out Reed, saying that was called from the sideline, though. And the first thing I tweeted right as it was happening was like, you just put the offense on the field on 4th and 5. Like if you're gonna go for it, just go for it, man. And then and after McDermott said we're gonna go for it at the halftime interview, like that's not what I was thinking. I was not thinking fake punt at your own 30-yard line. And I admonish every coach that does that in that move. I will sit there and roast the whole time. So I got to do it for Sean. It was just like in a moment. I think he was pretty good in this game with the decisions, to be aggressive and everything else. That one will stick in our brains, I think, for quite a long time, even though it worked out. Even though like the football guys were like, we're not going to let this catastrophe.
All don't lie.
Just put Josh Allen out there in the shotgun, have him give 1 or 2 looks, and then run for 5 yards like he was doing all game.
Yep, pretty much. So last question before we go here: how long is the window going to be open? Because it's still open. I had it negative first. I'm switching it to open, but we've got the Ravens and Chiefs obviously in the championship game. Joe Burrow is going to be healthy again next year. We don't know what's going to happen with the Browns, but they put together a good team with like 5 different quarterbacks this year. Jim Harbaugh is in LA. He's the Chargers coach. He's had success at the NFL level. So Mike, how long do you think? Do you expect this team to come in and be one of the favorites in the AFC again next year?
As long as Josh Allen's here, but then again, every year that Josh Allen's salary goes up and the cap crunch gets that much more hard, he's going from $18.6 million this season to $47.1 million next season. Now, like, Greg Thompson can figure out all the restructure magic and we can free up 20 or 30 million. But every time that if we're pushing off Josh Allen's salary like that every season and it's going to keep going up, I'm not sure how much it goes up after next season. But that really gets you into a bind, and you really have to hit on these draft picks. As long as Allen's there and Bean can hit on his draft picks like he has been a little bit more in the recent years, and especially if we can get him some weapons, if we can get him some downfield weapons like Burrow has, like Tua has, like C.J. Stroud looks like he has as well. I think their window can be open as long as they don't do what the Dolphins did with Dan Marino and just rely on his arm, first, second, and third.
Yeah. You said the name. I wasn't gonna say it in this show, but I've been thinking about it all week. What about you, Maniac?
Yeah, sorry, Dan Marino, you never finished the story. With that said, how long is this window open? I'm going to tell you right now. There's a Super Bowl window, and then there's a Super Bowl sliding glass door. Okay, let me explain to this what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Josh Allen is going to sign at least one more contract with the Bills in my mind, and I think he's going to sign it in 2 or 3 years, right when he has the leverage of being like the 10th to 12th paid guy, and he can re-become the number one guy. So I'm looking at the deal right now. What, 5 years left on it at this point? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, so he's got that 5. He's going to renegotiate in 3, and that's going to be another 5-year deal. So that's 8 years right there. That's your Super Bowl window. You have till 2032 to win the Super Bowl with Josh Allen. Now, here's the thing. If Josh Allen wins the Super Bowl next year, I don't think there's ever any need for him to ever think that he needs to leave Buffalo. Think about it. He's on the cover of Madden. He's a celebrity at all these events. He has broken the mold of like someone 10 to 12 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago would tell you that you couldn't get like a career after football playing in Buffalo because you couldn't network. You couldn't make the connections. It was all happening in like LA, Miami, all this stuff. I think that mold has been completely broken. I think that Josh Allen, is such a superstar that he's risen to that level and he doesn't have to worry about the exposure, long-term like financial well-being, all that stuff. Again, and I get that sounds silly to anyone. Of course, if I had a $250 million contract, I'd finish, but it's all about what you think you're worth. So right now, Josh Allen in his mind is worth 40 to 60 million every year. So he wants to probably replicate that for the rest of his life. And I think that as crazy as it sounds, he can do that after his career in Buffalo, given the prowess he has around the league, the connections he's made, and overall his stature as a player. So with that said, if he wins a Super Bowl in the next couple of years, it becomes a sliding glass door, and he will retire a Buffalo Bill.
Peyton Manning did not win his Super Bowl until he was 30 years old, as people have been pointing out this week. He was 3-6 in the playoffs before that. So who knows when success finally comes, when you get past your Horcrux like Manning got past Brady. We thought it was all set up for Allen and the Bills this year, finally getting a home game in the playoffs, just like Manning did with Brady in the championship game. Also, let's remember the tale of John Elway, who kept coming up short time after time, and then got to a Super Bowl when he finally had a good team around him, like in the last 2 years of his career.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it in the past with these quarterbacks, these outstanding quarterbacks who break through later on. That's where I give a lot of hope. The biggest thing with the Allen thing is, I mean, he's a freak of nature. He's an athletic marvel, but eventually those hits are he's not gonna be able to run like this his whole. Maybe he will. Maybe he will just be galloping around for his whole career in those 8 years. But I imagine those 32, 33, 34 years, he's going to want to stay in the pocket a little bit more. And he's going to want to dice around. And how do you build the offense around Allen when he can't get you out of these situations? That's why adding to this wide receiver room right now, getting ahead of it. Stephon Diggs going into year 30. There's not a lot of wide receivers that are producing career best years past year 30 and on. And so this is the time to add to that. I think that's the biggest. We come back to that wide receiver thing. Bean did not. The one thing I didn't mention, Bean has not picked a wide receiver. There's not been a first round 1 through 3 wide receiver since Zay Jones in 2017.
If you don't count the trade,
yes,
Diggs, yeah,
yes, and I don't because it's a guy for a 26-year-old. It's not a 22-year-old cost control
guy that can produce.
And it's awesome. Yeah, and he paid off. Like that was a great trade. It all worked out. How would Justin Jefferson look? How would it have looked if Justin Jefferson stepped in? It's another sliding doors moment for the Bills with the draft and everything else.
Ended up as Patrick Mahomes. How would he look here? We could play all these multiverse what
exactly,
I can't stand that shit. Oh my God. Everyone who fires and anyone who like tweets like, oh, how pissed do you think the Bills are? Are you serious? Like nobody here is pissed that we don't have Mahomes. I know that he's got championships and he's got a Kermit voice, but nobody is lamenting that we don't have him. Now, I want to ask you guys a question. Would you trade our next 3 first-round picks and 2 seconds to trade up to number 2 this year?
And take who?
For Marvin Harrison Jr.
Maserati Marv. Partham, are you serious? It's like a 1,200-yard lock in his rookie season.
We're doing the draft day trade. We're doing the Kevin Costner.
All I'm saying, I'm just saying, if you want to be like, we're all in, like, yeah, it seems like we're going to be pretty bare bones anyway. So might as well just like, go all in and at least try and win a championship and figure it out on the back end like the Rams.
I don't know if it's going to be for Marv, but I will make the bet and hit that button that they will trade up into the teens to pick a wide receiver to get somebody this year. They're not going to let it come to chance.
I hope that they do trade up, but I wouldn't want to make that trade for that many picks because the wide receiver class is so deep, and I have confidence they can find someone on day 2 as well as day 1.
I don't have confidence in that because he's been afraid to pick them, but I think they need to take some swings. You can't be in the game if you're not taking the swings, right? You're not going to hit the home run without taking a shot at it. So we did have a comment in Instagram. What do you think about replacing the coach? It's not going to happen, guys. It's going to take an atrocity. Yeah.
And I get it makes people feel good. The reason it feels good is just like because it compartmentalizes all the problems. You don't have to worry about the drops. You don't have to worry about the special teams disaster. You don't have to worry about the, defense no-show. And people can be like, well, that's all, the coach is responsible for. The coach can do like as much as he wants, but at the end of the day, they're competing with another coach on the other side.
Yep. That was shout out to Menace39 for asking what are your thoughts on the coach replacement. Yeah, I'm in line with that. Like it's just
at some point it's going to happen.
It's not worth the energy, truthfully, because it's not going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just not unless they go like 8-9 or 9-8 next year. Which will, if that happens, we're gonna have this podcast is going to be a lot angrier than this year's end of year version is. That's the only way I could see it is if it's a disaster like that. If they're a perennial playoff contender, if they make the playoffs next year, even if they don't win the division, if they make the playoffs next year, Sean McDermott's not going anywhere. They're going to keep that stability. Terry hit on one coach in his career. He's going to keep that guy around as long as he can.
The one tale that I remember is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the latter part of the 90s just were perennial Super Bowl, contenders with that defense of theirs under Tony Dungy. But it got to the point where they kept coming up short so often that one guy from the Steelers called them paper champions at one point. And then they switched over to Gruden, and boom, they became actual Super Bowl champions. I don't know how many other times that might have happened where a team needed a change of coaching, a change of, a new leader voice in the room to get them over the hump. But it's certainly something to think about in the distant future, but not the immediate future, especially because I think Terry Pegula liked Sean McDermott, not just as a coach, but as a person for various reasons.
The other thing with the tenure, what's that? The 5-year rule where no quote coach and QB has ever been together for 5 or more years now in a Super Bowl. Yeah, I mean, it's just uncharted territory. You look at regular season record, and again, I know people want to focus on the playoffs, especially when you have Josh Allen. Regular season is how you get to a good position in the postseason.
Yep.
That's how you get multiple home games, which puts you in a better position, even though people don't feel that way. And that's something McDermott's excelled at.
Well, ask Marty Schottenheimer how that worked out.
Oh, yeah. Now you're just playing all the fucking hits.
Yes.
Well,
who's your teacher?
I'm with you with the competition in the AFC. This team needs to be the 1 seed next year. That's how you get to the Super Bowl is you get the bye and you're the 1 seed going into it, and you let everybody else beat each other up in the wild card.
And by the way,
we haven't gotten yet.
The 49ers are the Super Bowl favorite right now. They were the 1 seed like in their conference. They didn't make it look very easy in that divisional round. You know what I mean? So again, it's the NFL playoffs. It's fucking tough no matter what happens.
Yep, it is. But we paid the bills. We did our job here. Season is wrapped. We'll be back for some draft stuff later on. But for now, you'll catch all of us next on Saturday morning for some WWE Royal Rumble. That is going to be a Royal Rumble with
among other things we're going to probably discuss.
Yes. But we are here. Can
you just see Linval Joseph coming to the ring and everyone's like, how are they going to throw him over the top rope? No, but shout out Outlet Liquor, the place to buy a case for this weekend.
Yes. Yeah. And if you're going to be a sicko like me and hate watch the AFC Championship and then watch the Lions and Niners afterwards, that's where you need to go. So, yeah, we paid the bills. Thank you, Maniac. Thank you, Mike, for joining. Have a good night.